Welcome back. Well, today is project day and we are heading outside for a project. So let me start by apologizing in advance for the poor lighting conditions. Um, I'm, it is what it is. It's a winter in Pennsylvania and we just have to cope. So what we are taking a look at today is a couple of items that were salvaged from the schoolhouse. The construction crew is doing the debris removal at this point, so they are hauling out the stuff that is salvageable. I got very lucky. One of my very favorite pieces, a beautiful chair, was salvaged, and something else that I'm saving as a surprise. So we will be right back. Well, before we get started, how about a little English as she is spoke? And once again, for those who are not familiar with this is a book that was written in 1855 by a couple of Portuguese gentlemen who did not speak English, as you will very quickly be able to tell. This is from Familiar Phrases. You have bad look. Yours hands are dirty. You are too pressed. You are insupportable. You are imbecile. You not make what to jest. You walk on. You will going too. Your presence is not necessary. Your razors are no clean. You not make that to prate all day's work. You put out the half from yours words. You are a poor walker. You know right well. Never have I you rumbled? Is there what is beautiful? You shall be very angry to do him. You interrompt me. You mistake yourself heavily. You gave to him that he would deserved. So I would suggest there is absolutely no doubt that they were not fluent in English. All right, first thing we're going to do is take a quick look at the chair we're going to be working on. And this particular film clip is one that I showed you last July when we were discussing how to identify your items. This was my great identification challenge, and here is the chair. Now, when we're through with this little film clip, we're going to pick up outdoors while I'm working on the chair. Okay, film. Well, we are outside in what I will be the first to admit is a little less than optimal lighting. So I'm going to have to ask you to bear with me because I set this up a dozen different ways, and this is just about the best I'm going to be able to do to get the entire chair in the camera range. So what we are looking at here, and let me step out of the way, is a chair that you have all seen before. This chair was in a video that I showed you back in July. That video was about identifying your things, and this was my identification challenge of a lifetime. I had a really hard time figuring out what kind of chair this was, and I needed to know because the chair, you couldn't even sit in it. It had upholstery that was probably from the 1960s, very poorly done. The springs were shot, had to be really rebuilt. And I needed to know what the chair would have looked like in its original state so that I could sort of bring it back to that point. And it is a chaise bras, a French armchair. Originally, these chairs were made in the early 1600s. This one is not. It's from the Revival period, and it's actually dated on the underside of one of these stretchers to 1878. So, what we are looking at is a survivor of the schoolhouse disaster. I was very lucky. I had put drop cloths on this when I put it in the schoolhouse just to keep the dust off of it, and that worked very well, and it actually kept the worst of the elements off it as well. So, did it do a perfect job? Oh no, no. The wood on this piece is parched. It was out, exposed to the elements. Well, there was drop cloth over it, but still, since there's no roof on the schoolhouse, you could hardly say it was indoors. It was out there for 4 months. So now it's been dug out. There was about a ton of roofing material on it. My good fortune was that a piece of the beadboard ceiling had dropped over top of it and acted like a little canopy. Now, I know it's probably difficult for you to hear me because I'm outdoors, traffic is going by, but this is a job that really needs to be done outdoors. And there are a couple of reasons for that. So let's start with number one. The piece was out and exposed to the elements and a lot of moisture. And there are two kinds of moisture we're talking about. The kind of moisture this was exposed to was rainwater that had sifted through, a crumbled roof with bits of tree, a lot of bricks, and a piece of ceiling, which is to say very filthy water by the time it trickled down to the chair. The chair did not get saturated. Nevertheless, the first tool we are going to use to reclaim this, or to reclaim any other piece of furniture that has been neglected, abandoned, comes out of somebody's damp basement, somebody's dry attic, or whatever. Our first tool is this. And this is just whatever the generic version of Lysol spray is. So, that's number one. The first thing we want to do is hit it with an antibacterial spray, a germ killer. Right across here it says kills 99.9% of germs. So the reason why we want to do this is we have no idea what sort of biological contaminants may have leached into the chair just by virtue of the fact that it was exposed. And it doesn't have to be, as I say, it doesn't have to be that your roof collapsed. Could be anything. Could be a chair you've purchased and you know it hasn't been well cared for. You want to make sure you're not bringing mold, mildew, or any other vermin into your house. So we spray it out. I'm not saturating it. I'm going to do this several times. It's not going to be just sort of once and done. I've done it about 3 times already. I will continue to do it until I'm really through with the process of dealing with the wood, because the idea that this could be full of nasty little germies that will then walk into my house along with the chair, and my cat will sleep on the chair, I would just as soon he not get sick. Now, the next thing we have to deal with is the wood. In this case, I've been working on the wood for about 3 days, ever since they dug it out of the schoolhouse. And that's because being exposed, the wood it acquired moisture. Not the kind of moisture I'm giving it, but moisture from nasty, filthy rainwater. And wood doesn't like water. Wood prefers oil. So I started at the bottom, and the reason I started with the bottom is just a simple practical consideration. I needed to get it outside and propped up on a table where it would be easy to reach the legs, get into the nooks and crannies, because I'm certainly not going to be crawling around on my belly with my oil and a toothbrush to do this. And as I work my way up, when the bottom is done, I can bring it inside if I need to. So if we're expecting bad weather tonight, I'm not going to leave it out in the rain. Trust me, that's why I have to do this in the first place. I'm not going to make things worse. So working from the bottom up means that when you need to bring it inside, you will be able to, and you'll be able to finish the job more comfortably indoors. What I'm using is Old English. This is Old English scratch cover for dark wood. You can use any good furniture polish like this. You don't want to use the waxy ones that come in a spray. I am not trying to put a coating on this. In other words, I'm not waxing this furniture. What I'm doing with it is I'm rehydrating it. So I want a liquid and not a spray. Now, when I do this, and by the way, I'm not using very many tools with this. I've got some Q-tips, I've got some paper towels, and I have a toothbrush. So here's my toothbrush. What you want to do is get the wood nice and slick with this stuff. I have done the bottom already, and the oil has soaked in. When it soaked in, went back the next day, did it again. I'm going to do this till the oil stops soaking in, until I can come back a day or two later with a clean paper towel and wipe up oil off this piece, because the poor thing's been through the wars. And as I say, you will find this in many old pieces that you come across. A great disaster, like the roof collapsing. It can just be a piece of furniture that's been sorely neglected. So, I don't know if you can see, I hope you can see, it's become shiny and glossy from the oil. That will fade shortly because the oil will soak in. Now, these are heavily carved pieces, and this is where my toothbrush comes in. I take my toothbrush and I'm just working the oil into the carving. Any little cracks and crevices, I want to get the oil all the way in. And because this piece is very ornately carved, it's a very good piece to show you how to do this. And there's no trick to it. It's honestly, it's just like brushing your teeth. You want to get in everywhere. And when a piece of wood has been badly neglected, you can tell the difference just by looking at it. Where you've got the oil in, where you don't. One of them is where, and that's the one where you don't have the oil, is going to be a weathered, grayish, sort of dull look. You want it all to be glossy, just polished. Now, I'm using the paper towel for the large, flat expanses, but wherever I come to a groove or a bit of carving, anything that's recessed, I'm going in after it with the toothbrush. I have some Q-tips in case I need them. Ordinarily, I find I can use the toothbrush for just about anything. Just get it right in there. And keep in mind, when I come back to this piece tomorrow, the area you see here that is nice and glossy, and I've picked up some of the polish from this. Tomorrow when I come back to it, that's going to be dull and flat looking, just like the one on the other side, because the oil will have soaked in and I'm going to need to add more. I'm going to need to do this until the wood is fully saturated to the point where it's not going to take in any more oil. And that's because it needs the rehydration. You would be amazed by how quickly you can bring a piece of furniture back to life just by oiling it down. It's a very simple process, and in this case, we're very, very lucky. Well, I'm very lucky because it's a very easy reclamation. I need to re-oil the wood, and I need to make sure I don't have germs all over the upholstery. I didn't have to redo the upholstery. Even the trim is perfectly intact. So I got very lucky. And this is probably one of the simplest furniture renovations you can do. And by renovation, I mean literally to make new again. Old English scratch cover, I think, is something that should be in everybody's home. But also, I think you should get a good sense of what it smells like, because you never want to buy a piece of furniture from an antique shop that smells like this, because this stuff will hide a multitude of sins. And if you get something that has been coated up with a scratch coat furniture polish, you could find that it's in much worse shape than you really think, and it's just because it's been covered with a scratch coat. So you want to do it on your own, to your own furniture. That's one thing. When you're buying a piece of furniture, it's more important that you know what's really there rather than what's being hidden by a good polishing job. So when I am through with polishing this up, and I'm getting all of it, the undersides going right into the cracks and crevices, I will go back. I will do it again and again. I'll do it as many times as I have to, frankly, because when I am done with this, I'm just going to go over it with some wax. And you can get, what I use is regular beeswax. I don't use anything fancy. I don't use like a furniture waxing paste or whatever. Regular beeswax, just rub it in. And if in fact I had been a little more diligent about waxing this piece before I tossed it in the schoolhouse and threw drop cloth over it, it might not have gotten quite as desiccated as it did after having been exposed to the elements. Now, mind you, after 4 months like that, even the best wax job would have failed. But still, part of the responsibility for this is mine. I did not take the kind of care of this I should have before I packed it away. But of course, I had no idea the roof was going to fall in. But I guess, it's a good object lesson. You never know when something untoward is going to happen. So you should probably be prepared regardless. And as I say, I was not. And this piece, in addition to the fact that it's just a pretty piece of furniture, is special to me because I did so much work on it, because I really did have to sort of pull it back from the dead. And I don't want to lose it. Of all of the things in the schoolhouse, this was the one thing I really have my fingers crossed for, and it is the one thing that came out. The video clip I showed you earlier showing you this chair, the screen that was behind it that I used as a backdrop did not survive. I do not think there is any possibility of repairing it either. I think that's just sort of gone for good. All things considered, what can I say? I knew I was going to have some losses when that roof came down, and I guess I'm lucky the chair survived. So instead of bemoaning the fact that I lost the screen, I'm going to celebrate the fact that I have the chair. Okay, so now you see what we're doing. You see how easy it is. We're just going to repeat the process. The whole chair, do it as many times as it takes. And this is something that if you have an old, battered, lifeless piece of furniture, you can easily do on your own. Just sort of snatch it back from the jaws of death. If you find something at a yard sale, at a flea market, in a dumpster, I have nothing against dumpster diving, but this is the way you can bring it back. You need to have patience, because you might have to repeat the process again and again. When you are through wax, and your furniture is really going to be good as new. Now, if I were doing this on a piece that had not been reupholstered, if I did not want to save the upholstery, this is something I would do before reupholstering the piece. It would be a lot easier if I didn't have to be so careful not to get the oil on the upholstery. And so, just in case, if you're getting a piece of furniture you've salvaged out of a dumpster or something, the upholstery is shot, do the wood before you do the upholstery. It's always the smart way to go. And then you get the upholstery done, your piece is all set. So, today we have looked at one salvage from the schoolhouse, the chair, and we're heading back inside because I want to show you a second weird thing that survived and tell you how we dealt with it. Okay. Okay. Now, I promised you a little surprise. Right here. And his friend. These are a couple of, well, let me hold them up again, a couple of rose canton plates. Very nice. They are relatively modern. They're not old. And we had spoken about this. This is, let me see, um, decoration made in China. So it's reasonably modern. We can tell very quickly, and I'm going to just sort of move it around. Can you see the gilding just glimmering? That tells you it's modern. Older gilding is just not this sort of shiny. Nevertheless, they are nice plates. And for some reason that I fail to fathom, I had them in a laundry basket in the schoolhouse. I don't know what I was thinking, but there you have it. Now, let's take a look at the before picture. Okay, that's what they looked like when the crew hauled them out from under a couple of tons of brick and roofing. I don't know if you can make out from the picture, but they were frozen. The muck on them was iced over. Now, I wanted to talk about this quickly because this is something, it's very simple, but it's very counterintuitive. You have plates that are frozen. How do you deal with that? Well, you do not give in to temptation and soak them in warm water. No. You want to bring them up to room temperature gradually. So you put cold water in your sink, put your iced plates into the cold water, and let the temperature of the water just raise until it gets to be about 70 degrees room temperature. Ideally, you're just going to leave them in there for maybe half an hour or so. The reason for this is porcelain. It may be modern porcelain, but it's good porcelain. If you take a piece of frozen porcelain and you drop it into hot water, it will crack. That was something that we discussed back in elementary school science classes. Hot expands, cold contracts. So when you throw something cold into a bowl of hot water, the molecules are just going to expand. And they may well do it far too quickly. If that happens, you are going to go in and find cracked porcelain. And that's why I wanted to mention this, because it was such a good opportunity to discuss that. I certainly never anticipated having to deal with frozen porcelain. I certainly never expected these plates to come out intact, but if they did come out intact, I did not expect them to come out intact in a block of ice. So I popped them in a sink of cold water, and then as the ice melted and the water just eventually came up to room temperature, the filth, and as you saw from the picture, we are talking serious filth, just sort of, dissipated into the water. So I had a sink full of filthy water with little bits of sealing pieces that had been stuck to the plates with the ice. And then once they were at room temperature, it was very easy to wash them in warm water. I did not use hot water, by the way. I used warm water. Right now, I could probably wash them in hot water, but I just didn't want to do that too quickly. Again, I wanted them to acclimate to room temperature. So if you ever have a piece of porcelain and the stuff in it is frozen, that's how you deal with it. Put it in a sink of cold water and let it gradually come up to a reasonable temperature, room temperature, 70 degrees or so, because otherwise you could have a lot of damage on your hands. So it's one of those things that, you just don't think about it until something like this happens. The opportunity arises for us to discuss it. And amazingly, a roof and a brick chimney fell on this stuff. They were exposed to the elements. They had frozen. There was plastic. I'm sure you saw that in the picture. Plastic that was stuck to them because, frozen in a block of ice, and they came out fine. So I'm looking forward to a few more surprises like that coming out of the schoolhouse. There was a lot of damage, but hopefully there will be just a few little, oh my goodness, I have no idea how they escaped unscathed. Okay, before we sign off very quickly, Kim C., you won the Lucite Bird pin. Please get in touch because, as you know, we have a time limit on claiming the prize, and your name has been listed in the video notes. I've mentioned this before. Please, please get in touch because if I don't hear from you, I am going to have to choose another winner. So I don't want to do that. You need to get in touch. Okay, have a great day. Have a great evening. I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow.